Good evening. My name is Anthony Kearns. I'm the prosecutor of Hunterdon County, and I want to welcome all of you and thank you for coming. This evening, I'm just going to set some parameters and really set the direction of the purpose of tonight's meeting is essentially we encouraged our leaders throughout our towns, municipalities, boroughs, the county to come and learn about, become educated about how legalization of marijuana might impact their communities. And we're doing that by, we're going to reach out to Chelsea Clark, who's the chief of HIDA. She's going to speak, talk about some of her experiences, what she's seen happen in Colorado. And then we have Reid and John, I'm forgetting his name, John Cutner, an attorney, to talk about some of the impacts of employment, etc. We are not here to debate whether marijuana has a benefit, either medicinally or recreationally, or whether it has liabilities to the person. We're really here as a community looking at how is it going to affect our county economically and socially. From a law enforcement perspective, we have a beautiful, bucolic, rural county, and we're so blessed to be here. Our law enforcement is geared to deal with certain issues, but we really don't have resources to deal with additional problems. And so we need to look at that. You as leaders of your towns, mayors, council persons, committee persons, need to consider what might be the economic costs and that might be required to answer legalization of marijuana. You need to think about that. I think you need to meet with your chiefs, your departments, and talk about that. This is what tonight is about, is to encourage that conversation, to encourage that dialogue. Say, how will this impact us? What are our resources? With alcohol, if somebody operates under the influence with alcohol, we have an infrastructure to deal with that. Our police officers are trained. If they believe, based after a stop and after physicals, they think that the person might be impaired, they can bring them back to the station, put them on a machine, an alcotest, and we have a reading. And it's a per se violation if you're above a .08, and we're equipped to deal with that. Introduce marijuana, we're not equipped. I'm not saying that someday we can't get there, but we're not there today. And we don't have those answers of how we're going to get there. And so that's what this is about. And what are the additional resources going to be required to deal with the legalization of marijuana? So that's really what it's about. If your question is going to go down into the wonderful benefits of marijuana or stories about how bad marijuana is, we really can't go there tonight. We don't have the time, and that's again not the purpose of tonight. So we're going to start the presentation. We're going to go. Leslie, you're speaking at some point. Okay. We're going to start with Chelsea. Then John and Steve are going to speak. We're going to hold questions until after everybody's done their presentations, and then we'll open it up to questions. Okay? So thank you. And Chelsea, you're on.
Okay. All right. Well, greetings from Colorado, everyone out there. I can tell you I've done a bunch of these presentations across the country and have never felt more like a fish in a fishbowl than right now. So, at least it goes well for all of us. You guys are my first trial live Skype audience, so I get a break in a little with me. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to be asked to come out here and speak to you via video and just kind of share some of our experiences in Colorado. No matter what side of this issue you're on, like the prosecutor was saying. Just the fact that you guys are here and willing to learn and learn more, I think speaks volumes about you. So I really applaud you for being here and taking the steps to do that. So I just quickly wanted to give you a background on myself and the HIDA program in case you were not familiar with it. HIDA stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. So essentially, we are a federally funded grant program that is out of the Executive Office of the White House and the Office of National Drug Control Policy. Now, that being said, there are HIDAs all across the United States based on different regions, and our primary goal and purpose is to dismantle and disrupt drug trafficking organizations and bring the flow of drug trafficking down to as reduced as possible, as reduced as we can. So that's our overarching goal. Now, one of the things that we do annually is do a threat assessment on all illegal drugs in our area. And so kind of from that, it sparked, when we legalized marijuana, this idea of we need to start tracking the marijuana data and see where we go from here after we legalized, because it kind of took all of us really by surprise when it was actually legalized. So that was really our whole purpose in starting it. As the first state, we felt like we owed it to the rest of you to look at the data so that you would have a good basis rather than just anecdotal stories to make informed decisions on. So that was really the whole motivation behind this report. And then it's kind of grown each year as we're able to get more information. I will say one of the most difficult things that a lot of other states now are at least having a little bit more help on is we had absolutely, well, pretty much no baseline data in a lot of regards. A lot of our data sources didn't exist, so we started posting them and trying to find what was out there. So keep that in mind, and that's why, you know, we've had the benefit of this so many years, whereas other states haven't. The other thing I want to say about the report specifically is that there is a lot of misinformation out there about it, that we put out false information or that you can't rely on the data. And I just want to, from the start, because I know you guys have a copy of the executive summary, know that the data you can 100% rely on. We have a policy that we get information from other people. We do not put it out until they put their stamp of approval on the graph that we're using to display their information. So that's kind of how we've set it up to do it. And primarily all the information in there comes from other federal, state organizations. So feel free and follow up with any of the sources, but you can rest confident in the information that's in the report. So now that we've kind of covered that, just briefly, I know you guys have seen, again, the executive summary, so you have a brief idea of what's in there. Hopefully some of you have had the opportunity to go and look at it. And if you're giving me a time card, I cannot see it, so you might have to. But it really has been, it's evolved each year as we find out more and more impact out there. One of the most prominent ones that we noticed right away was our traffic fatalities. We did notice that traffic fatalities involving marijuana increased. Now, we can only say involving marijuana. It's not necessarily the cause, because just like with alcohol, even if they were over the limit, you can't say 100% that was the cause. That's just not how the data is reported in the system. We also looked at children's use, youth use, adult use. I think, as you can expect, when something's legalized and you take those penalties away, we've seen use increase. We have seen that with youth as well, although the last couple of years we have seen a bit of a dip back down. An interesting thing with youth, we've seen more suicides actually with youth having marijuana in their system, which was one of the things we did not know or think of when we were doing this. We also look at hospitalization and ER data. As you can see, that unfortunately is several years time lag. So one of the things that I think, or I guess two areas that are most prominent to me for what I do and being able to see up-to-date data, which is my favorite, would be our law enforcement, and then of course our tax revenue and our jurisdictional. So first of all, I want to say with our jurisdictional, even though Colorado voted this in as a constitutional amendment to our constitution that says that every citizen is allowed to have possess marijuana and grow plants in their house, it is optional for jurisdictions to actually allow for recreational grows or shops or anything involving that to be within their area. And several have opted. Several have opted in, but opting out has also been an option. The thing with the revenue that I will say, I think a lot of people hear a couple things. They hear, first of all, that Colorado has sold billions of dollars in marijuana, which is true. However, that a lot of that is just straight up sales that goes to the individuals. Our state has only seen about, I believe the highest was 140 million. That's less than 1% of our total general fund. So our state eats through that pretty quick, and we still have a lot of gaps that we're finding some unintended consequences that we weren't counting on. And as the prosecutor was in the past, and a lot of that is not driven specifically by them. That would be from chiefs of police who are getting complaints from communities based on smell, based on traffic coming in and out of a certain home, based on weapons. We're seeing a lot more weapons associated with this because of the amount of cash that can be involved. So I think for us, that was one of the biggest kind of shocks, that we did not realize it was going to take that much effort and resources from us. But that report has a whole lot of information. Really hard to cover in 10 minutes. Hopefully, if you guys have any more specific questions, we can get to those a little bit more at the end. But that is a very, very brief overview of some of the information in there.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is John Cutner. I'm a partner with the law firm Weber Gallagher. This is typically not the forum I speak to. Typically, I'm speaking to HR people, risk managers, insurance people about the issues presented by the legalization of marijuana. I've been speaking on the topic and advising clients, I guess, for about 4 years now, and I was actually speak here tonight, and thanks for having me. So as I said, I work for a defense firm primarily. We are throughout Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, New York. And I advise clients on the issues. So as a result of speaking on this, and I do it pretty regularly, I have to read a lot of stories, some of them relevant, some of them irrelevant, some of them silly, some of them legitimate. And there's a new story on the topic every day, as I'm sure anybody that's interested in the topic is aware of, because you're all here, so you're probably somewhat interested. So for instance, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals just recently ruled in favor of an employer in Montana. The Ninth Circuit is known to be the most probably liberal circuit court in the country. They ruled in favor of the employer when an employee was terminated by the employer in Montana for having a medical marijuana card. The injured worker was actually driving a truck during business hours. He was tested positive for marijuana, but because Montana doesn't have a provision in their legislation that protects employees, the Ninth Circuit held in favor of the employer with his termination. Similarly, New Jersey doesn't have any protections for employees. That's one bit of information that you should know. With the coming changes to the law that they're proposing, that's probably likely to be implemented, there is going to be a provision that will protect employees to some extent. States like Pennsylvania, New York, and various other states, mostly on the Northeast, have anti-discrimination provisions in their legislation. Interestingly enough, most of the more progressive states out west do not have these anti-discrimination provisions. And you've seen a lot of case law over the last 10 years coming out initially in favor of the employer, but more recently on the East Coast and the Northeast states in favor of the employee when they've been terminated for either having a card for medical use or testing positive at a pre-employment screening. So that's one of the issues that comes up pretty regularly in the employment context. The other issue that comes up pretty regularly is workers' compensation, and do insurance carriers have to pay for medical marijuana? It's clear to me, after following this for 4 or 5 years, that judges follow politics and they follow what's going on in Washington. And I'll touch on that just a little bit, because it's probably, it's really unclear. It provides no certainty to those involved in business around the country what the federal government's position is, and I'll explain that. So now we have 32 states that have some form of legal medical marijuana. You have 10 states that have legalized it recreationally. Most notably, this past year, you had North Dakota and Oklahoma pass legislation for medical use. Those are 2 very red states, and some would say as a result, this isn't a partisan issue, at least with regard to medical. There's polling out there suggesting that the vast 62 to 65% of the general public are in favor of recreation. There's, disputes about that, but long story short is we're going towards legalization on some level, at least with medical. So I'm losing my train of thought. So with regard to the medical end and the legalization effort, you're finding a lot of, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. The federal end, that's what I'm saying. So you have this patchwork of states laws, with 32 states legalizing it for medical use, and then you have the federal government's position since 1970, which is the CSA. Most of you probably know, Schedule 1 is the most dangerous drugs, and there's no accepted medical use, can't be even administered under medical supervision. That's been the law since 1970, and as a result, there's been no ability to do any research. Most widely referred to as the Coleman policy, and that was put out by Deputy Attorney General Cole. It was pretty much in place during the entire 8 years, and what that did was it sent out a memo to all the U.S. attorneys around the country, and it said, we don't want you pursuing prosecutions of those involved in the marijuana business as medical marijuana, not recreation, in states that have legalized it, unless you find evidence of organized crime, trafficking into other states, or they're selling to children. We don't want you guys to get involved. And as a result, you saw the massive expansion that we've seen in 32 states now. That combined, I think, personally, with the evidence of the treating of seizure disorders really was the impetus to get it to where we are now, with more than half the states. That said, in January, Jeff Sessions repealed that policy, which was the hands-off approach, and said to the U.S. attorneys around the country, if you guys want to pursue prosecutions, go right ahead. He's former Attorney General now, so it's even more unclear. We're not really sure what the policy is from the federal government, but we know that the CSA is still in effect, for sure. All of this said, it seems clear as mud. If you're operating a business, you're hiring people, it's federally illegal, but it's legal under your state's law. The federal government has another hitch to it. There's a budget amendment that's been in place since 2014, and that's initially referred to as the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment, named after the Republican and Democrat congressmen who put it forward, and that defunded the DOJ's budget to pursue prosecutions of those engaging in the medical business under their state's law. That amendment is still in place. It has to be re-upped and added to every federal budget every year annually. It's still in place, has not been put in since its inception in 2014. And as I said, it defunds the Department of Justice's budget. They actually challenged that in a case called U.S. versus Marin Alliance out in California. The Department of Justice went after a dispensary, and the Ninth Circuit tossed the case out. So I don't think you're going to see another one of those happen while that's in place. I also think it's probably unlikely at this point that that amendment's not going to be included in the budget. The Congress is now held by Democrats, and you're probably likely to see some sort of change on the federal level in the next year, potentially to 2 years, in terms of a rescheduling of the drug, at least for medical, potentially to a Schedule 2. All the other Schedule 2 drugs that you're probably aware of, the opiate-based pain medications, it's there's an irony there between the most dangerous drugs and those drugs. And I point that out. Most of the discussion that I'm talking about obviously deals with the medical, and recreation is a whole other animal, and I think that's a lot of the reason why you're here. There are a lot of issues that have come up with employers on that end. As I said, there's issues with regard to employing people. And in New Jersey currently, we don't have any protections. I think there will be. There was a federal district case that was ruled on a couple of months ago in New Jersey, where the federal district court judge threw the case out. An employee in New Jersey brought the case under the New Jersey law against discrimination, and the judge said because it's federally illegal, essentially, he tossed the case. But you had a federal district court judge in Connecticut rule the other way on very similar fact pattern. But that was before the session's rescission of the coal mine policy. There's a lot to this discussion, and I don't want to go over my 10 minutes. I'm trying to get a lot of information out here for you, but thanks for having me.
I'm Stephen Reid. I'm the Executive Director of New Jersey RAMP, responsible for approaches to marijuana policy. I'm also the mayor of Point Pleasant Beach. Before I talk about the bill, where it is now, where I think it's going, I want to talk to you about, we were the first town, Point Pleasant Beach was the first town to say no to any dispensaries. We had we all knew that the Governor Murphy won the election, and his #1 issue was recreation marijuana and all the money it was going to bring to the state. So as the council and the mayor, we talked about, look, we don't want it in our town. You've all been to Point Pleasant Beach, I'm sure, I hope. Just like your county here, your town here, people come to visit. They love Point Pleasant Beach, okay? And we just didn't see that it was the right fit for us. You know, can you imagine going to the boardwalk with your family and people are smoking marijuana right there, going to the beach, people smoking marijuana right there in front of everybody. We have a great downtown, we take pride in our downtown. So we just didn't see it was the right fit. Not really thinking anything of it, we just knew that it was coming. The governor promised 100 days it was going to be law, and here we are today, still not law. I was hired a few months later as Executive Director of New Jersey RAMP. We are a group, and please go to our website, we are a group of doctors and people who deal with first prevention, like Leslie here. We are the police chiefs, sheriff's officers, moms and dads, people who really care about recreational marijuana. We're not against medical marijuana. We're not against expungements or any kind of social justice issues. We think that's important, and that's, I think, a bill that is there already can take care of those issues. So Senate Bill 2703 was introduced by Senator Scutari. Senator Scutari has been trying to legalize recreational marijuana for many years, and this is something that he really believes in, and he was pushing it. It was supposed to be approved within 100 days of the governor becoming the governor, and when it was introduced, I believe in May, we all thought that by the end of June it was going to be passed by the Senate and Assembly and signed by the governor. That did not happen. The budget year ran out. The next day, the Senate President, the Assembly Speaker, and the Governor all stood together, said, we will get this done by the summer. And as a New Jersey RAMP Executive Director, my job was to go out and meet with legislators, just like you have legislators here in your community. We met to make sure that they understood the facts of recreational marijuana and what it meant to their towns. And so basically what we've had right now, it was told it was going to be done in the summer. It did not happen because I believe, and I know for a fact, the more legislators who knew what the facts were about what recreational marijuana meant to their towns that they represented and their residents, I think they said, you know, we need to put a little break on it. Then it was told September, they had a date in September, it was going to be heard in the Senate Judiciary Committee. They need 6 votes. They only had 4. They said October was going to happen. They cannot get the votes in the Senate committee, so the Senate President, he's very good at what he does. He believes in this. He's also a sponsor of the bill. He moved it a few weeks ago to the Senate Budget Committee. and he brought the Senate and the Assembly budget committees together. Now, if you don't think it's about money, it really is, and I was very shocked. I heard numbers are higher than that, but this young lady behind me, she knows the facts. She lives it every day. So you're telling me where this governor and Senate President and Assembly Speaker think that we're gonna have $300 to $400 million coming in because it's gonna be a windfall for New Jersey. You know, they're not thinking about the consequences, and I think that's something that I'm glad I'm here to talk to you about today. I've been asked to go and talk to other mayors and council, and when I asked them one question. Before I start speaking, I'll ask you too, if there's some mayors here or freeholders here, how is recreational marijuana gonna make your town or your county better? That's all I want you to think of when you leave here today. So, it has been passed in the Senate budget and the Assembly budget. It's been moved to the floor for a vote. Right now, I've just been dealing with the Senate. I can't count to 80, I can count to 40, and I know I can count to 21, and that's what the Senate needs. All right, they're not there. They may be 12 or 13. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm excited because it's supposed to come up on the 17th, and I'm told today it's not gonna come up for a vote, because they don't have the votes. They will tell you that they're working on taxes and how much taxes they just don't have the votes. The Senate Democrats do not have the votes because most of them, 3 or 4 of them, are mayors of towns, big towns and cities, and they do not want it. They understand it, they don't want their town, and they're not gonna vote for it. Now, will they get to 21? I hate to say it, I think they will. We had a couple Republicans who were leaning that way. I don't think they're gonna go that way. So I'm pretty excited about that. This new bill has a couple problems that we're really lobbying against. And I don't want to call it lobbying, but I think education. When you sit down with a legislator, when you educate a legislator, or I educate a mayor and council, and I talk to them about the facts of this bill, delivery system, how about a nice smoke lounge? Wouldn't that be great? You know, what are we thinking about here? She can tell you right now, in Colorado, the children are starting to smoke at 12. Are you kidding me? You don't think we have problems already with the vaping of marijuana oil right here in this school? We have problems with alcohol and marijuana and every other darn drug. Opioid problems, heroin problems, people are dying left and right. By the time this year is up, we'll have 200 deaths in New Jersey alone regarding heroin overdoses and opioid overdoses. So I ask you, what are we thinking of? So a lot of things right now in this bill, I think they have a long way to go. And I see there's some police officers here, we talk about the DREs, drug recognition experts. So if in my town, if I had to have a DRE, that's an expert that's gonna, if someone's getting pulled over, they're gonna be able to tell whether they're, and again, everything's subjective. It's not like they can blow into a tube and tell you exactly what it is. So it's subjective, it takes time, blood tests, paperwork, that's overtime. A DRE needs to be trained for weeks and weeks and costs money. And the state is not thinking of the towns or the counties, what it's gonna cost everybody. So tonight I'm just here to talk to you about that. Oh, and also another thing, the medical marijuana, again, we're not against medical marijuana, but don't be fooled. Right now, in this bill, it says you can have a medical facility in your town, and when this becomes, or if it does become recreation, well, that can be medical and recreation facility right there in your town. So you tell me what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Leslie Gable. I'm the co-CEO of Prevention Resources, as well as the project director for the Safe Communities Coalition. I want to say thank you so much for coming this evening, and I want to just thank everyone for being on our panel, and thank Chelsea, because this was our first attempt at Skyping someone in as well, so thank you so much. For those that might not have gotten a copy, the report that Chelsea was referring to is the Rocky Mountain HIDA Executive Summary. There's a full extensive report that is available online if you Google Rocky Mountain HIDA, which is again HITDA. You'll find a report. I just ask you to hold on printing because it's over 200 pages. So that's why we just gave you the executive summary. Our coalition in particular, just very similar to the prosecutor, We certainly believe people who are in medical need, that the research get behind, and to help the people who greatly need it. We fully support that, just as I mentioned, as Steve did about New Jersey law. We are concerned about the impact to our community as a coalition, which is why we asked to have these types of events so we can get as many questions answered. We're also very concerned about business. We're a business as well. We have a nonprofit business here, and what the impact might be for employment, employers, employees. What are the things that we need to consider? I think if you haven't kind of put together through all of our speakers, is that there's so many gaps and there's so many questions that we just are asking everyone to take a pause to consider, what do we need to have in place? What are the things that we need to consider before we possibly opt in to have this in our towns? I can tell you there are 2 towns that have already opted out, and that is Raritan Township and Highbridge. For those that might want to know what that looks like, we gave a copy of those ordinances. We also have more ordinances. Anybody that would like more information can certainly contact our office. Again, that's Prevention Resources. We're happy to provide any examples that we've seen across New Jersey State as well as the country. Again, I just take a moment to say thank you for being here. And what we'd like to do now is we're going to open up the floor to some, to some questions. I ask you, if you don't mind, as the folks on our panel here, if they could repeat the question. I know we're going to try to have a microphone. Paul over there is going to help see if we can get another microphone. Yeah, we have 2, so we can. Yeah. So, does anyone have a question? If you can, just if you wouldn't mind, which panelist you'd like to ask a question to? Yes, Joey.
Okay, so am I getting the microphone?
Yeah.
I'll ask a question without, thank you for being available in Colorado. I was wondering, 2-part question. First question is, what percentage of the towns in Colorado have opted out of having a dispensary by percentage? And the second question would be what can New Jersey learn from the mistakes that have been made, if any, in Colorado with regard to the legalization of marijuana?
Chelsea, did you hear the question okay? Or?
I think so. I think I heard, so the percentage of those that have opted out, and then what to learn from our mistakes. I have the report right here, just so I don't misquote you, so I'm going to look up those stats so I have that right here to tell you. It is, so I will tell you, 65% of local jurisdictions have banned any type of medical or retail marijuana businesses within their facility. Colorado has a lot of rural areas as well, so that's part of what you get there. But you hear so much about it because we also have big cities, right? Denver, Collins, and Boulder, things like that opt in. Also, I would say Colorado Springs, for as large as they are, a lot of people actually think that's our state capital, which it's not. They have opted out as of now for any retail marijuana. Their law enforcement, their local law enforcement has been very verbal about that they're already getting slammed and they do not want it in their communities. So that's this right now. 27% have medical and retail businesses, 3% only have retail, and 5% have medical only. So Colorado Springs would be within that. As far as lessons learned from Colorado, I think everybody uses the analogy that we've been doing this, trying to build the airplane while flying it, which has 100% been the case. We've been making rules, regulations for something that we don't even entirely understand. I think one of the biggest things for that, somebody already mentioned the impaired driving, and alcohol and things like that. Well, it's taken years of research for alcohol, and most states have come up with their own ban, you know, the 0.08 or whatever is considered impaired. Colorado pretty much arbitrarily named a amount that you're considered impaired at, and it's 5 nanograms or higher. I want to stop really quick because this audience is pretty generalized, am I right? Like, you guys are all different fields, all different community people, just very broad. I don't know, is there a real?
That's correct. No, that's correct.
Okay, so I want to take a few minutes and educate you on some things that I learned and am still learning. First of all, one thing with marijuana is that it's really, really hard to establish a baseline of impairment because it affects people completely differently. And depending on how you consume that marijuana will also affect you differently and for a different amount of time. So when you THC, that's the psychoactive component of marijuana. You have your CBD, which is called cannabinol, which is the medical side, okay? And that's what people refer to as having medicinal benefit. Then you have this other component of marijuana called THC, which is the part that actually affects the brain and is psychoactive. So a lot of the pure CBD medicinal things do not have that. So they're pretty different there. So it's really different things often when you're talking about medical versus recreational marijuana. And then the THC, it impacts everybody differently because it is fat soluble. So we're very familiar with alcohol, which is water soluble. So we're able to get a clear idea in a blood draw or the breathalyzer how impaired. Not so with THC. It can be stored in somebody's fat based on how frequent of a user they are. It can, impact us differently based on different sizes and shapes and all of that. So it's very, very tricky. So to say that we're going to be able to regulate it is just, it hasn't been done yet. I mean, that's just not possible yet. We don't have enough information to regulate it. That's just a fact. The other thing I want to say too is there hasn't been enough research done between alcohol and marijuana together. We're learning more and more about how much those impact each other and how they can impair somebody, even in smaller amounts. The two of them together can impair more than a high amount of one substance with the other. The other thing I want to talk about really quickly is I get very, just desensitized to this because, yes, I'm here in Colorado, I deal with this is my job. But I think you need to know that when we're talking about marijuana, it is not, what we have today and what we've made in Colorado is nothing like you've seen before. And I say that sincerely. We used to, in Woodstock in the 70s and maybe when some of you came up through college and things like that, we were seeing marijuana at, 2% or 5%, and that's what we smoked. Nowadays, the stuff you smoke is easily 17 to 20%, and we're pushing higher and higher numbers on that as well. The other aspect, though, is the edibles, which I will tell you, and I think any of our legislators would agree, has 100% been one of our biggest headaches. It's extremely difficult, very difficult to regulate, very, very hard on our teachers and school resource officers at school to know if it's a kid's lunch or if they have something different in there. But the stuff you put in edibles is concentrated. And what we mean by concentrate is it's almost pure THC. We have 80 to 90% concentrate levels. That's 80 to 90% and sometimes higher of this psychoactive component that gets ingested. And so again, depending if you smoke it or you eat it, it's going to leave your body in a different amount of time. So all this is stuff we've just been learning over the past few years here in Colorado. And we have no cap on potency. We've tried to put through a couple things through legislation and they've been shot down. So I think edibles is a big one. The other one I would say is allowing home growth. I don't know if there's talk of doing that in New Jersey. That's been a huge headache, especially for law enforcement. We have a case now that they've identified over 800 homes around the Denver metro area where people are growing marijuana right next door to them. And there's honestly, really, mostly, absolutely nothing we can do about it unless they cross over into, being involved in organized crime or things like that. I think that was shocking to a lot of Colorado residents, that you could go out in your backyard and have that lovely marijuana smell, and there be nothing you can do about it. So definitely home grows, definitely edibles, trying to, in general, the mistake is trying to regulate it like alcohol. I think all of you would kind of agree we don't have alcohol 100% down when we have over 10,000 deaths in the US caused by that on the roads every single year. We still have a lot of issues with that. And the fact that we're trying to regulate marijuana like that hasn't really proven to be successful. So, sorry, long, run out answer.
And Steve wanted just to add one more thing. Hold on. Go ahead.
That's a great question about, like, home rule and things like that in New Jersey. I travel around the state, I know there's 50, thank you.
I know that there's 50 or 60 towns that have said no to any kind of, like a dispensaries. Some have said no to any recreation, which is great. But I just can't keep up. There's just so many of them. But I do travel around with Senator Rice, who's African American, and Bishop James, who's African American. And what they're saying to me, what they've said before, and they can say it, I can't, but I can repeat it. And basically, towns like mine, middle to upper class, white neighborhoods are saying no. And guess what's gonna happen? It's gonna be pushed into the inner cities, and the people who are in the inner cities, they're very worried about it. So what she was just talking about was THC levels and commercialization. When you have gummy bears and lollipops and all these great brownies and every other darn thing, sodas and things like that, what do you think it's targeted to? It's targeted to the children. And let's not be fooled. It's all about the children here. Get them young. THC levels, again, you've got high years ago, you maybe like 5 to 10%. Now, edibles are 85 to 95%. And then like the marijuana is like 20 to 40%. So we got some real issues here. We got THC levels that they're not even thinking about, lowering, not even talking about that. So they can basically put out any THC levels as they want. And my good friend, Governor Florio, he's the head lobbyist for the edible people. I mean, this is unbelievable. Every lobbyist on Trenton, on State Street, has 2 or 3 pro-marijuana clients. Me and the people who don't get paid, we're out there trying to meet as many legislators as we can and educate. So we're trying to do the best we can, and it's pretty interesting. So a couple weeks ago there was a hearing, and everything you hear her saying, everything, I swear, I thought it was me, everything she's saying, we had all these experts say it, and the legislators who were yes, poo-pooed everything, said no, you're wrong, these are the real facts. So I'm glad you're hearing the real facts, and you can't argue with these facts. Thank you.
And I just wanted to address, Joey Novick, your question too from a more local point of view. So Joey was former mayor of Flemington, so it is councilman. Okay. Former councilman from Flemington, and Flemington is a police department. It's not a big town. A mile, how wide is Flemington? 1.1 square miles. There's 10, a department of 10 police officers, and they do a great job. My concern, as the chief law enforcement officer, and my concern for a town like Flemington, that should they legalize it, and again, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but again, I want them to think about and ask themselves these questions. Were Flemington to have a dispensary and they were to sell, let's say, $2 million worth of marijuana in a given year, they get 2% of that, right? So that's $40,000 that they would reap as a benefit of allowing a dispensary in your town. a police officer, I can tell you, in New Jersey, $40,000 does not cover a police officer and the benefits that go along with that, not even close. So I would ask these towns to think about that. Were they to open the doors and allow people to come in and buy marijuana, and if they had a lounge and smoke marijuana, what type of increased law enforcement presence would you need? Those questions have to be asked. I'd ask you to sit with your chief and go through that and try to understand that. Steve had mentioned DREs, drug recognition experts. They need to be trained for a 40-hour session, and then each year they need to be recertified. And by the way, that hasn't even been tested in the courts yet. You know, there's something called the Fry test, which helps determine the validity of the science before a court. But with these DREs, if and we don't have many out here in Hunterdon County, if we needed to do that, that's sending them out, that's overtime. Once they're active as a DRE and they make a case and they arrest somebody and they do their analysis and they deem the person to be impaired, it's not as easy as looking at, again, at the alcotest number above 0.08 per se number. It's their assessment, which is subjective, scientifically based, but subjective, and then they have to go to court and they have to spend a lot of time. For the town, again, I'm not getting into how that works, but for the town, what's that going to mean in terms of how much more overtime are you going to have to budget for? How much more police officers are you going to need? The questions really should be asked, and that's, from my perspective, what I care about is properly providing for the public's safety, for their health, safety, and welfare. That's what I'm concerned about, and I want to make sure, because I have an obligation to do it, that we have things in place should towns opt in, and I would like those questions answered before they did that.
One of the other things I know I've seen a lot of people here from the medical community, in case you didn't get a copy of the report from Colorado, it does specifically state that the yearly rate of emergency department visits related to marijuana increased 52% after legalization of recreational marijuana. That's comparing 2012 to 2016. Additionally, the yearly rate of marijuana-related hospitalizations increased 148% after the legalization of recreational marijuana. So again, for those that are in the medical community, do we have the staffing, do we have the people in place, do we have the education out there so we can avoid having these types of hospitalization and ER visits? What do we need people to know? So these are the things that are left with questions that we still have that we haven't been able to prepare to inform our community. So that was just one other thing I know that we hadn't touched on yet. Do we have a microphone that's working? We have questions in the back. All of you wouldn't mind.
How are the dispensaries being regulated, and who is financially accountable for the manpower to do so?
I don't know if I can really answer that, because I don't think the state really knows what's gonna happen. They're supposed to be putting together, I think, a commission of 6, and that's how they're gonna try to regulate it, but imagine 6. And again, when we talk about it like a dispensary in town, everyone may think that, wow, we'll just have one dispensary in town, what's the big deal? I can guarantee there's not gonna be just one dispensary in your town. To open up a dispensary costs millions and millions of dollars. And that's money that, because you can't use a bank right now, everything has to be cash. So they're gonna be pushing commercialization and pushing the dispensaries and try to sell as much as possible. So I don't have that answer. I don't know if the legislature has that answer for you yet.
Well, how is it regulated in Colorado? Who pays for it and who manages make sure that they're following all the rules and regulations?
So Chelsea, do you know who is a regulatory body in Colorado for the dispensaries?
Yes, I barely hear that, but yes. In Colorado, honestly, I'd say that's another thing we didn't do great. Some other states, even Washington, did a better job. They incorporated that into their alcohol and tobacco board, I think. What we have in Colorado is called the Marijuana Enforcement Division, which is funded almost half by marijuana taxes. We do have a regulatory agency that is being funded by the industry they're regulating. But we also, I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years, almost 6 years now. And I think we have about, we've gotten up to maybe 40 investigators. And we have close to 1,000 shops, and that doesn't even include all the growth facilities and product manufacturing, like for the edibles, and all those are supposed to be checked and regulated. And we know from talking to people in the industry that often just doesn't happen. And then the rest is paid for out of, I believe, our taxes, the Department of Revenue is who they're under, so that's how they're funded.
Okay, thank you, Chelsea.
Sure.
Paul, you wouldn't mind the microphone? Sorry.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? I'd like to know how the government plans on helping us change our tune with our children. I've got an 8 and a 14-year-old, a pair of 30-year-old twins, and I don't need any help with that. I've taken care of that myself. But how do I tell my parents to make the transition from don't smoke weed, because if you do it in your 6th and 7th grade, you're going to graduate as the village idiot, to, hey, it's fine, spark it up, light them, smoke them if you got them. How do you make that transition? And does that not pose a difficulty for us parents who've been telling our children all these years that this isn't good for them, that now it's okay because the government's profiting from it?
If I can,
Sure.
you know, I've been talking to legislators about that, and they say, well, it's only for 21 and older, okay? So, I mean, you know, I try not to laugh, because, you know, I want to be, you know, I want to be respectful to them, but that's what they're saying to you, that in their mind, oh, it's 21 and older. We all know better, okay? And then, you know, well, we have this great DARE program. I mean, you know, so much money goes into that. So what's going to happen to that now? So people come to me and say, well, Steve, you know, it's going to happen. You really should be fighting for more money. I said, no, I want to fight it to kill it. I don't want this to be, I don't want recreation to be in New Jersey. So I'm going to try to keep on fighting it. But that's a very good question, because when it's acceptable and accessible, how do you stop them from doing it? And don't get me wrong, they're all doing it now. But that's another thing. Well, they're all doing it now. Well, the black market exists now. You think the black market's going anywhere? No way. And then, she probably can talk about that as well. And then, you know, so if it's okay to do, well then, it's, you know, I'm sorry, you know, I was in Middlesex County the other day, and I was speaking to a prevention group, about 100 people there, and they did a study, and over 75% of the high school kids, juniors and seniors, think it's okay to drive while high, and just think it's okay to smoke marijuana. I mean, we got real problems with people.
Yeah, I can also just add on for our agency that does prevention education. It is a difficult conversation to have. Alcohol is already challenging in itself. So I can tell you also from the diversion cases that we have here in this county, we have a lot of children, and they are children. And I know these are children that can't stop using marijuana right now. So from a prevention standpoint, and from our agency that works and provides counseling, especially for young children, it's a great concern, and we don't have the answers. And I think that that's really what tonight is about, is, and I know that we were, some of us were talking beforehand, is that we didn't get it right with alcohol. We did not get it right when, with the commercialization and the message that we sent out. So we need to get it right before we try to legalize or bring any other substance. I'll tell you what it was like in Manhattan on Sunday. Every block I went to, there was an RV, it's called Weed Mobile and Edibles. Every block, there was another one with lots of different types of statements being, you know, on their loudspeakers. So that's not really what this should be about. And that's some of the, when we talk about commercialization, we talk about advertisement, You talk about really making sure, so that's really what we need to get right. So, sir, you know, we're with you on that.
And Leslie, can I add something in there?
Sure.
I think it is, I mean, we've seen it, it is very confusing. I mean, especially to youth, but even to adults as well. I mean, we're saying, first of all, that there's this product that we've said is not great, has been illegal this whole time, and now we're saying that it's legal. So then they interpret that as okay. Then we also have this issue of legalizing a drug for health purposes while we're simultaneously legalizing it for recreational purposes. So what is that telling us? That then we can use other drugs for recreational? It's a very confusing message. And then ultimately also is actually very confusing and undermining to government in general. I mean, marijuana is illegal federally. If it weren't, this would be a different discussion, but it is. And states, they do not have the right to do what they're doing, how they're doing it. States absolutely decriminalize something. That is within their abilities. But to license and regulate people to commit federal crimes, it's a whole different ballgame. So you really then blur the lines of where do you draw the line of when you're listening to authority and not. I'll also just say, and on that point, I don't know if you guys saw the reports, but there's now a movement out of Oregon, and apparently it's based out of Denver as well, to push for recreational psilocybin. So that's recreational mushroom. And they are pushing that, I think in Denver medicinally, but in Oregon, they're pushing it both, again, medical and recreational. And then from some of the school districts that we've talked to here, they've talked to the kids, and the kids will tell them readily that marijuana here is easier to access than alcohol. We had a superintendent that was quoted after all of this, and he was in particular talking about tax revenue that they hadn't received. And he was saying that the only thing that marijuana legalization had brought to his school was marijuana. He said they used to see a lot of alcohol and marijuana, and it's primarily just marijuana. So it seems to be very easily accessible, a ton of mixed messages associated with this, and you're left with a very confusing point on where to be on it.
Sure, I have a question. I'd like to thank the mayor of Point Pleasant Beach for the leadership on this issue. We were the first town in Somerset County to outlaw both medical and recreational via ordinance. It's not good for our town. We don't want it. The borough of Manville, it's the lowest income town in Somerset County, and we don't want to be targeted. Okay, we don't want these shops on our main street. But my question is, I read a report that says for every dollar in tax revenue, there's a $4 expense. And if anyone in this room thinks this is gonna save New Jersey from a fiscal crisis, this state's bankrupt. This isn't good for our society, it's not good for our youth. Medical, like this mayor said, I'm all, get it, regulate it, get the drug to the people it can help. But for our youth, for our youth, it's not the right,
talking about?
it's not the right thing to do at this time.
Are
So
you
I
the mayor or
want to,
councilman?
I'm the mayor of the borough.
Oh, Mayor, I just want to thank you very much for coming and saying that. You know, when the governor was running and the Senate president and the Assembly speaker, they were saying they were going to raise $300 to $400 million and they were going to plug the hole. And just the other day, the Office of Legislative Services, they did a study, and it may be $200 million. So you see how it's going down.
The other question I have is, why isn't this being put to a vote of the public? Why isn't this on our ballot?
I don't know that. I know that they will tell you, the governor, the Senate president, the speaker would say, well, we want to get it right. So we want to really work out all the details. And I think you all know that, I mean, if you're asked, you know, are you against marijuana? It's no, who's against marijuana? And I got to tell you something, I'm not against marijuana. I don't, you know, personal responsibility is very important to me. I want, you know, consequences of personal responsibility, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I just didn't want it in my town. That was very important as well. But, we're not gonna do that. But, so, I think that's why. They wanna keep on working on it. They think they'll work out all the details and they'll have it right. Not like Colorado, sorry.
Okay, do we have, I know, can we go over to this side of the room? Do we have more than one microphone, or am I holding it? I'm holding it, okay.
Yes, I will announce my name anyway. My name is Jeff Oakes. I have a question for Mayor Reid. You said before, and you said it tonight, you said it before on the record at the council meeting in Saraville, that you support medical cannabis, yet well, actually, you are going to other towns and recommending for them not to open up medical dispensaries. How do you explain the fact that you're lying to cannabis or medical cannabis community and the people here in this meeting room tonight? How do you explain that to us? Because you can't have it both ways, sir. You can't say you're for medical when you don't want, when you spread the word to ban our dispensaries. We are dying, some of us. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Don't interrupt me, please. I'm dying. I'd like my 2 minutes.
This is what he does.
No. I have cancer, sir. And I would like a little compassion from you as the law states. And we don't appreciate, I'm sorry, this state supports medical cannabis. And this is rhetoric. Where do we get our medication? Supplies are running low for us. I want to stay off of opioids. This is terrible. We hear about opioids. No one here in the room has an answer to it. Us in the medical community, we've been exposed to opioids forever. And we can't stand it. We use cannabis to stay away from it. It is your answer to your problems. Yes, is it like any other drug? Sure it is. You want to call it a drug? Yes. It's like caffeine, it's like nicotine, and it's like alcohol. Sir, please explain to us, the public. You owe it to us. You parade yourself as part mayor and part ramp. I don't even know who I'm speaking to tonight. I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor Reid, Mr. Oakes, okay, he's gonna answer the question, okay? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Wherever I travel, I have people who want to badger me and go after me. So Mayor, be careful. They may be showing up at your next meeting. Let me just be very clear.
Badger me.
I say recreation marijuana.
He's threatening my friend in the bathroom too. You got some nerve. Yeah, I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm disrupting the meeting. You're disrupting my life.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Recreation marijuana.
Hurtful.
That's New Jersey Ram's #1 thing, but don't be fooled. And I told you before, because it wasn't in the bill before, it was really only about recreation marijuana. Now in the new bill, it says a medical facility can become a recreation marijuana. So that's what I talk about. And in my town, we just didn't want recreation or medical. And that was a fact, and that's how we believe it. Now in New Jersey, there's 6 medical facilities, and they should be blaming the governor because on November 1st, they were supposed to announce another 6, and then another 6 after that, and they're still holding on to it. So tell me what the problem is. Not me. They're angry with me. I don't know. But I'm telling you right now, we are against recreation marijuana, and I'm gonna keep it at that.
Okay, thank you. I think we have some more questions. Okay, yes, sir?
Hi, just first more of an observation. This has been really great, and thank you for, the cross-section of opinions and the experience in Colorado. One of the things I want to point to, those of you who are interested, obviously many of us are most concerned about adolescents or children, high schoolers, middle schoolers, the effect that this is going to have on them. There's a really great position paper that was written by the Canadian Psychiatric Association, the CPA, who's done lots and lots of studies and research on the subject of marijuana, its effects on the adolescent brain. So I encourage all of you to go to the CPA and read that position paper that was written in advance of Canada legalizing recreational marijuana, so I think you're going to find that a good resource too. My other question is, what's to prevent, in the legislation that's pending, what's to prevent people from just growing this at home and avoiding, the tax windfall that our great governor thinks that we're going to get?
That's a good question. In this state, in the bill, there is no homegrown in the bill. And
As a matter of fact, I think it's explicit that it's illegal to grow. It is in the bill that that's not permitted. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but it is illegal.
Another question? Go to this side, folks. I don't know if questions from over here.
Thank you all. One of the supporting studies by the Journal of American Medical Association 2014 in an open access study showed that there was a 25% reduction of opioid overdose rate in states that allow medical use of cannabis. But the effects of legalization of recreational use are unknown. For you in Colorado, can you shed any light on the possible translation of possible benefits of reduced opiate use once recreational use is allowed?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, I know very familiar with that study that you're referring to. We talked to several of our colleagues in the Department of Health, and they essentially don't think that study is valid. They looked at it in a lot of different ways. They compared different years that weren't really comparable. So that in and of itself, I don't think they were really looking at it in a great way. And again, I'm not medical, so I don't know exactly what it is, but I do know, look at that a little bit more, because the one thing I will say is, it's really hard to look at those two specifically and say for a fact, one helps the other or hurt the other, just based on how different they are. And then I'll also say, we have had, even though thankfully we are not at the levels that a lot of you have seen on the East Coast with the opioid overdose deaths, we have seen a tremendous increase over the last 5 years as well. So I was even in Michigan, and I saw billboards that said states with legalized marijuana have 25% fewer opioid deaths. And that may be true, but it's not necessarily because of the marijuana, it's just because we were at a lower rate to begin with, if that makes sense. But I'm on a heroin response work group. We are certainly in a crisis for our area as well, and we've been working on it. So it has not solved that problem, if that helps and answers any of your questions.
Yeah, I could maybe touch on that a little bit. I'm a little familiar with that study. What that study was addressing was directly chronic pain sufferers, I believe, and a reduction in people with chronic pain who are on high dosages of opiate-based pain medications, reducing their opiate intake with substitution of marijuana. I deal with a lot of cases in workers' compensation, and carriers over the last few years have been making the determination, specifically before the rescission of the Cole memo, to willingly, without a judge ordering them, to maybe pay for marijuana instead of opiates. That's obviously the hope is that they're going to get the patient off the opiates and substitute in the marijuana, and they were doing that willingly because they were making the determination that they were going to end up saving money paying for marijuana as opposed to the opiates. That practice, I think, has probably dropped off a lot after the rescission of the Cole memo. At this point, but there was evidence that people who are chronic pain sufferers, not necessarily just addicted primarily to opiates, had the ability in some situations, maybe not all, certainly, but to reduce their opiate intake. I do remember when the changes to the Medical Act were announced in March by Governor Murphy, it seemed as though he was asserting that you could use marijuana to combat addiction with opiates directly, and I'm not aware of that, but that seemed to be the proposition he was making, which would be different from using marijuana to combat somebody's opiate intake that has a chronic pain condition. So they're two different situations.
Yes, I have a question. First, I want to make two statements. Number one, in 5,000 years of medical history, there's not been one person to ever overdose from marijuana. I just want to let you know that it's not medically possible to overdose from marijuana. It is extremely medically possible to overdose from alcohol. I have a friend that died in college. I'm sure people have had friends that have died of cirrhosis of the liver. As to the officer's point, having a dispensary in town and 10 officers, you have 13 bars in your town and 3 liquor stores. So I don't know if you have enough officers for your liquor stores, because it's proven that alcohol causes much worse impairment in driving. And to what you say to your children, it is true. And to what you say to your children is, you say we got it wrong. That the law was passed in order to subjugate Mexican and black people, and it's been used as a tool, a racist tool, to arrest poor and black people. And it, in itself, the law in itself, give you an example, Haddonfield, New Jersey has 1% of black population, but if you're black, you have a 74 times more chance of getting arrested for pot. How's that even statistically possible? So think about that in your head. So the social justice aspect of legalization will be the fact that black people don't get arrested for pot anymore, and you don't give the ruining of life effect that the arrests happen. Number two, really quickly, I'm a journalist, and I believe that the mayor of Point Pleasant Beach is in a bit of a conflict of interest, and I want to ask him about that. When did you become the executive director of RAMP, which is an organization that lobbies for anti-legalization, and are you being paid by RAMP for your work?
This is, I'm sorry that this is dirty laundry that you all have to hear, but they're trying to say that I have a conflict. First of all, in December of last year, if you are a journalist, you probably should know this already, but last year in December, we approved it. I became executive director of RAMP in May. So there is no conflict.
Are you being paid?
Absolutely.
Why isn't it on your disclosure statement?
First of all, that's an old disclosure statement that you guys sent in, and you're looking for Oprah requests and things like that. So, you know, you guys can come at me, that's fine. I have a new, excuse me, there's a new one, and so you need to look at the new one, okay? Not the old. As a lobbyist, let me tell you something, as a lobbyist, and I'm not a lobbyist, for being the executive director, I had to, because there wasn't anyone who was a lobbyist, and if you're talking with legislators, you need to be regulated. As a lobbyist, it's the most regulated industry in the country, okay? So you have to put down who you represent. So I represent, in my 2019 ELEC report, you'll see there's only one client that I have, that is New Jersey RAMP, and I'm a registered. So thank you.
Okay, I just want to ask you one thing. So we know the effects of alcohol, right? And it's devastating communities, people. I've never met one person that said alcohol's made my life better. We've almost banned smoking because it's bad for you. How do you think this is going to be any better than either of those? How is this better than alcohol?
Well, I'll tell you number one, about 50,000 people every year.
So, I'm gonna, excuse me.
I'm just talking recreation use, not
The problem, listen, the problem is, this is, sir,
a mood-altering drug.
Sir, just hold on a second. Okay, so this is being filmed. Nobody can hear you but the two of you, okay?
I got you.
If you want to have that conversation, you can, but you can do it outside, okay? The conversation is going this way, it's not going amongst each other. You certainly can have the conversation, I'm not discouraging it, but it's not appropriate to do it in this forum, okay? Because we have a platform and a way to do this. So sir, if you have a question for the panel, you're welcome to ask it.
How does the town think that this would be any better than alcohol? From a recreational use, how do we feel this is better than alcohol?
Well, it's not. I mean, you know, we all have problems with alcohol also. It just everything's compounding.
My question focuses on the edibles
and that appeal to children. So maybe Colorado has something to offer in that regard. Recently, we've seen Jewel start to pull their ads from social media and say they're going to remove the fruity flavors because of that problem of attracting kids. So is there any, that seems to signal some sort of consciousness around the problem. Is there any like movement having or thought about changing the rules around edibles and their accessibility and their attraction to children?
Well, I'd love to, and that's what we basically have been educating the legislators to, that the edibles are the real problem here. Okay, you know, you're talking about 80 to 95%, and she even said in Colorado they have real problems with that. And again, that's marketed to children, and don't be fooled, it is, and that's a real problem. So I mean, like I said, a good friend of mine, Jim Florio, governor, he's a lawyer / lobbyist in his firm. And they basically hired him to represent the edible group of marijuana in New Jersey. And so when he's going to, you know, sit down with these legislators, what do you think he's telling them? It's the greatest thing on earth. Don't worry about it, children won't get it. How do you think, when she's talking about what's happening where children are being rushed to the hospital, is because they're eating their mom and dad's cookies and brownies and edibles and things like that. So, you know, that's a real problem, these edibles.
I'm just curious.
Okay, just based on the amount of time we have left, if we could just ask our panelists just to have a few closing comments. And so we'll go ahead and start with John. Do you have a list?
Well, thanks for having me. Obviously, it's a hot button issue. It's really rapidly moving forward. If you run a business, if you're involved in a business in New Jersey, there's a lot of issues that are presented by it, and you have to be aware of them. Prepare yourself. I think it's really a situation with regard to, and our panelists from Colorado touched on it, the issue of being able to test for intoxication. That's a real issue that is presented by this whole discussion and topic. And it's a situation where the social policy is getting out ahead of the science, it seems like, because we can't really address that. So if you have an employee at work that gets injured, you can't test to determine if he was intoxicated necessarily, because you might have, you know, consumed the marijuana a week ago. It's problematic. So hopefully somebody can develop a test to determine intoxication. That would be very helpful at the minimum. But there are a lot of issues that come up as a result of this, so you really want to educate yourself.
Well, you know, we only touch upon a few things here, but the things I was talking about, and I have been talking about, and the people from New Jersey Ram, the experts. See, I'm not an expert, but I'm looking at studies that are coming from different states, especially Colorado. You try to say, okay, maybe New Jersey's like Colorado, but we all know New Jersey's not like Colorado. I'm gonna tell you one thing, there's a couple things right now. And I had a chance to speak with businesses, unions, and in the last couple of weeks at a business group, they're not even thinking. You get high on a Saturday, you go to Monday, you get tested, and you have THC levels, which you will for 28 days, you're fired. I mean, he's gonna be rolling it in, because there's gonna be so many lawsuits, you're not gonna know what to do. Imagine a bus driver with our children, THC levels. How about a union worker on the Parkway building a bridge? You know, these are people I've talked to, people who own the businesses. They are worried. They are worried what's going to happen with their insurance rates. And another thing, which we don't even talk about, how about the drug driving? The drug driving has gone up, more deaths, more accidents, and it's gone up like a crazy. AAA just told me the other day, they didn't get a chance to speak. They said that your car insurance is going to go sky high. So just think about the consequences when this gets through. If it does get through, you know, we're going to have more people drug driving. Oh, it was really great. I had a chance to speak with one of my friends from the medical marijuana group the other night. They came to my town hall.
Oh boy.
And you know what they said? And they have a card, and that's good. Good for you. Medicaid. I hope it's good for you. I hope it works for you. But you know what? Don't drive through my town. There was 5 of them there. Every one of them got high before they came to my town. They drove in my town, they drove out of my town, and they wore it like a badge of honor. That's a real problem. So I'm glad we're having this discussion, and I'll be here if you want to talk to me later on. Thank you.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear. Am I getting a little wrap up?
Yeah, just any lasting thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Okay, our sound quality's getting worse and worse, but hopefully you can hear me. I just would say thank you guys again so much for having me to speak to you all. Again, I commend you for coming out and getting the information. I think that's the biggest thing. Before I was so heavily involved in this, I got a lot of my marijuana information from assumptions or things I had heard. And honest to goodness, based on what we have done here in Colorado, this is a whole new drug than you have ever seen before. Even people that are familiar with marijuana, if you're not familiar with Colorado marijuana, then you don't know it, because it is very, very much a harder substance than we have ever seen. And so I just caution you again to look into it and everything surrounding it to get the information, because it really is a lot different than I think a lot of people assume that's happening now. But again, our report is available online. It's actually www.rmhiveta. And it's on our reports tab. It's a lot of graphs and pictures, so it's not a lot to read through. So, and if any of you have follow-up questions for me, I'm more than happy to do that with you through Leslie or something. But thank you guys again for having me do the video.
Thank you. I want to thank the panelists for coming out tonight, for giving your time and your wisdom and your experiences to us. I did want to recognize we have freeholder Van Dorn and Legay here, Chris Bland from the Hunterdon County Chamber of Commerce, Mayor Reiner. I want to thank our law enforcement for coming out and participating. Certainly my office, Chief Pizzologo and Deputy Chief Approvato. I know Lieutenant Nevers here as well, Mike Williams, my first assistant. Listen, I think tonight we maybe have raised more questions than answers, and I think that was the point, is there are a lot of questions. And it's really, the onus is on you to go out, sit with your council, your municipal attorneys, county attorneys, and sort through this, meet with your police department, and try to figure out how we're gonna go forward. You know, an issue that didn't get raised tonight is, what if you allow a grow in your municipality? What about the right to farm? How is that going to affect you and your town? Because that takes, once there's an actual farm, it really takes it out of your purview as a municipality. It goes to the Department of Agriculture, and now you're not able to control whether they sell on that property or not. These are, again, questions that I just ask you to consider as we move forward. I want to thank Leslie Gable, Prevention Resources, and her whole team for what they do. Last but not least, certainly we want to thank Hunterdon Central for making this venue available to us. Superintendent Moore, Principal Cooley is here. We thank them for always being great community partners. I think this is an ongoing conversation, and but let's not let it get too far in front of us where we can't make decisions that are good for our county and our municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, there's an evaluation sheet. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, you can leave them up front or on the table as you leave. We thank you again for your time.
Wow. That's interesting. Wow. Let's find your dad. Wow.
Okay,
What's up, buddy?
take care.
I'd like to speak to the chief, though. I want to speak to the chief.
So you noticed he said that he's not getting paid as a lobbyist at the beginning. He talked about Florio.
Yeah.
And he submitted to being paid as a lobbyist.
Yeah.
So we got a problem here.
Yeah.
An ethics violation. He doesn't really understand what I'm gonna do. I don't think he gets it.
Well, he threatened me in the bathroom.
Yeah, what happened
He
with that?
threatened
What
me.
did he say?
He said, you guys are trying to ruin my livelihood, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm going to ruin yours. I'm like, really?
How are you doing? How are you gonna go from saying that you don't get paid, then admitting to getting paid?
Yeah, he did talk in circles.
Talking like you, sir. After that, good. How are you? So I haven't got the second article hasn't come out yet. Trust me.
Oh my God. See? Yeah. What sucks is I have to get out of my wheelchair.
You're gonna try to catch me here.
I want to talk to the chief.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Jane Griffith.
Hi, Jane. How are you?
So nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, he says I'm trying to ruin his livelihood.
There you
And
go. How's everything?
yeah.
You ready for me? Take care. You're not ready? April?
I know. Who's following who? He's Oh, hi.
Hi, I was hoping I could get your take on the
Sure.
Okay, great.
I gotta leave something. Good job. I can watch. Good job. Watch this. Look at this. This is great. You should speak too.
And what did you think of
I thought it was a lot of propaganda. It seems like there's a lot of trying to keep people very afraid. They're trying to mention things about mixed messages about federal law being illegal in the government and the state being illegal. Absolutely. There's mixed messages everywhere. It's just, I got a problem with Mayor Reid. He's doing a lot of unethical things right now. He's representing himself as the mayor, going all over the state through all these different councils, representing himself as the mayor. He's part of this grant force, he's executive director of this grant. So clearly, he is doing some unethical things by representing himself as the mayor and not as the executive director of the grant. He referred to me as his friends here, as people who follow him around.
Yeah, I was here for that part.
Because we're going to this meeting with certain patients who are fighting for better access.
It's very rude.
And he keeps showing up at the same year.
I got cancer. You're supposed to have compassion. You are supposed to have compassion. And stand down.
You're a jerk off.
Stand down.
You have cancer?
What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? The guy has cancer. What's the matter with you?
Come on now, it's not the venue. Let's go.
What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you, jerk off?
What am I?
You're a jerk off. You're a jerk off, douchebag. Picking on a cancer patient, really? Picking on a cancer patient? Jerk off. Idiot.
I'm sorry to hear that, dude. Don't go after somebody.
Wow. What the hell was that all about? Jeff, you're starting trouble with people. I'm kidding. No, don't. You're rude. You're apparently a rude person. Maybe your sign was rude.
I think you know what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to have cancer silent. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Silent cancer.
Okay, that's what we're doing.
Starting now.
You're too loud about your cancer.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
No talking about cancer. No. Shh. Shut it down. Oh my God! I hope I got it on tape. Oh my God.
When you come to these events, they kind of pick and choose who gets to ask the questions. So it was nice to actually get them to make a comment. I think that
Sorry.
Which way you going?
I'm waiting for the chief. Is this the chief?
Hey, Chief.
Chief. Chief, one question. Chief, one question, sir. Chief, I have one question. Protection for your officers that use cameras under doctor's prescription.
It's not my decision. decision, that's up to the legislature.
I know.
My job is to follow the law. That's what I'll do.
Right, but you do support it though?
I will follow the law.
But see, you can't say, that's a problem, you can't
I
even,
can say I'll follow the law.
see, your union doesn't allow for it either. How come your union doesn't speak up for these cops?
Speak for other people, okay? 'Cause I'm not
I talk to a lot of cops. I talk to a lot of cops. I do a tour.
follow the law.
See, the chiefs can't, how come the chiefs can't advocate for it? Because I talk to chiefs that believe in it, and they can't say anything.
Follow the law.
They can't say anything, but you're tied, you're handcuffed by saying anything, because of the law.
I think my handcuffs are off. I'm saying go follow the law.
Yeah, but if
That's
you
what
agreed-
that's what I supported doing. That's what I
Right,
can
but
do.
if you agreed with that it should be legal for your officers, you can't say it. You legally can't say it. That's the problem I have. You should be able to say it.
I wish you all the best.
Because your officers are on Prozac, they're on OxyContin, they should be allowed to use a safer alternative, you know? And you should support them, but you can't, because legally, it's federally illegal, so the chiefs can't support it, and the unions can't support it, and neither is the NRA. The NRA's not helping us either. So there's a lot of things going against us here. But when the chiefs can't support their own officers, that's a problem. So chiefs should always be able to support their own officers, and they can't. Federally, they can't. That's not good. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Oh my God. This is crazy.
I was like, that's on purpose.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is
Being a bully, no?
this is an insane meeting. Jeff got yelled at. You missed it.
I know, I walked out for 5 minutes. Why does that always happen?
It's on YouTube, I think.
Oh, good, okay.
It should be on there.
Good.
This guy here. He's starting shit with a cancer patient.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hold on, where's the
Yeah,
bathroom?
it's a tough
I'm
guy.
at the bathroom.
All right.
Start arguing.
Yeah, I don't want to argue with this guy. He's an idiot.
Is that who yelled at Joe?
Yeah, he's yelling at a guy with cancer. I mean, really? Jesus, really?
Down here on the right, but this is, sorry.
All the way what they're talking about here. Really? Oh, he's fired up? Good.
Get down there with you if you don't mind. We're gonna do a thanks for your
Have him enjoy the conversation. He knows that.
What do you guys want? Yeah, question for you. No, I don't. But at the beginning of the event, you said that you weren't being paid as a lobbyist?
Come on.
You specifically
Come
said
on.
you weren't being paid.
You don't want to talk? We went to Manville. You have no wheelchair access in Manville. Your wheelchair access is atrocious. You remember us. You remember us. Come on. I know. I know, but it's medical. We got people with cancer, that need our medicine. Come on. I think that guy is out there. I'm afraid of him. Like that guy with cancer, he seems crazy. He's out that way. Hey Jeff, come over here. Oh, sorry. Oh, here he is. Yeah, he's still there. He's still there. Yeah. Hey Jeff. This should be good. I know. I want to see that. I want to see this. Yeah, come on, Jeff.
Don't want to go nowhere.
He's waiting. He's waiting.
Sip of that water.
Yeah, I know. All right, this should be good. This should actually be interesting.
Must be mostly white school. The water tastes good.
Reid doesn't want to talk to us.
That was good. He said he's here to take questions.
Who?
He specifically said he's
Yeah.
not being paid as a lobbyist.
Yeah, he's here to take questions.
And then after I asked the question, he had to admit it because he filed a new financial disclosure statement after I called him
Ah,
back.
yes.
And I told him that. I told him. So here's the thing, though. He should have filed that financial disclosure statement right away, because it doesn't matter if you filed after the fact. You started back in May, so all the lobbying has been done since May has been an ethical violation.
Did you go out in the hallway for a bit? Before?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, I was talking to the janitor.
Thank you.
He had more. The janitor had more to say.
Yeah. Coming from a place of intelligence.
Wow, it's cold.
Oh, I thought you guys were coming out anyway.
Oh, sorry.
I'll see you, brother.
Ready now?
Patrick, good job. Thank you, man. God bless you, dude. Good job.
What now?
He's just getting a paycheck.
Which guy? Which one?
Reid, he's just getting a paycheck.
Oh, the mayor?
Yeah, he's not having any impact. I don't know if you guys know.
They left the dogs here for you?
Well, he has an impact on Brick, because I know Mike lives in Brick.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. He got there early. He's not impacting it. I know where he is. I know you know.
What are you doing? He had to come.
I'm taking pictures.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted.
There is going to be an
I wanted it. The dog walked right past me. The dog was going.
I thought that's who was talking when I walked out of the
he creates a problem because he conflicts with medical. I represent
What's happening?
I mean, I know what she does, and she's
Where's the dog? Oh, I heard a bark.
Oh, trip the dog out. Oh,
Sam. Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right.
You think that dog was sniff right? That dog was sniff right. That dog was.
yeah, the dog was already tripped out.
He's gonna trip out just walking past me.
I
Trust me.
didn't walk with you. I wasn't with you.
What am I?
He was out here trying to break out of the car.
That was great though.
So whether your ears and your talk doesn't matter. And the other issue about the
Well, the best part is
when the
I
farmers
repeated
are
what
told,
he
when the
said.
30 farms in America are told,
I repeated what he said.
they're going to get their pitchforks.
All right.
And they're going to go down and say, why are you saying we can't sell it?
Oh, we don't want to grow basil anymore.
We don't want to grow basil anymore. They don't even, the farmers don't even know.
We hate basil.
But every farmer knows it.
Mike, look.
I'm going to my car. Mike's gonna stop at my car.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're going to run into you. I'm sure we'll run into
He
again.
fucking threatened me in the bathroom. I saw him in the bathroom and threatened me before the meeting. He's like, you're trying to ruin my livelihood. And I was in a wheelchair and he's threatening me. He's like, I'm gonna ruin you. He's like, oh, really? Mayor Reid, he threatened me.
Threatened him in the bathroom.
He's like, I'm gonna get you. After this is all over, I'm gonna come get you.
Why don't you find what it will take to be able to extract it?
Yeah.
His dog's
What
sitting
about
down.
get him clearly not conflate medical and recreational? Let him be against recreational.
We'll leave you alone.
His dogs are going nuts.
Stay away from the dog.
Why don't you open up your jar over there?
There is a chance that one of your medical patients might get trampled.
You might get bit. You might get bit, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm not working on contingency.
You do
So
smell. Yeah, you just smell.
If you get bit, I need a retainer in the morning.
Man,
And I told you.
yeah. Yeah.
You guys are just big educators, but he's not really having that much of an impact.
No. He's not. Listen, wait.
And
that's like I said.
in Mandeville,
This is more fun.
This is fun.
And I spoke to the mayor of Mandeville when I spoke to him. The thing with him is he should be left alone because he is a true believer in what he's saying. I saw him get agitated. He believes it.
Oh yeah,
You know?
he's
And
so.
so for a guy like that, you just gonna say, okay, that's his opinion. It doesn't matter. You let him have his opinion because he believes it. I said, you understand that you're gonna lose the.
Listen, at one time, his opinion not, and because of guys like him, me, I shouldn't hardly take any credit, but Cheryl Miller, you know, she died.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are dealing
How
with
many
like
years ago?
Yeah, we're fighting for patience here.
real things. Yeah.
Yeah.
this is-
I
I
say
don't
the
put up with
town,
any bullshit.
yeah, I say with the towns, well, I don't go into any towns that don't want us. I ask them to make a distinction between medical. I just have, with me, I just have to continue to gain power. I'm consolidating power because I have the power of the paper, the power of the mouth. So as I gain power, then I slowly work.
So where do we find your stuff?
Yeah, join us. Let's collaborate. Okay.
Every day.
Okay.
Aubrey is her own.
Oh, you have joined us then.
Oh, you are?
Good.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry.
You've been here.
Why don't we just ask his name?
I'm
You probably told me 6 times already. That's the short-term memory.
I already gave you guys a revenge plan. It's just a plant season for all of us. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's going to take some time. I got to work slowly.
Where was this at?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you'll discuss that later.
Yeah, we'll discuss that when we're
Yeah.
on camera.
Yeah.
Microphones.
No, I just.
It's like strawberry fields of Bayonne.
Door's shut. The door's shut.
Yeah.
No, Aubrey's good. Aubrey's helping me sift through good clients, bad clients.
Oh, yeah.
Well-funded people, people that can,
Are you taking care of Joe Marie?
No, that's Paul.
Oh, that's Paul.
Paul, but Paul is doing work for me also.
Oh, okay.
Everyone
Cool.
everything
That's
comes-
great.
everything flows
That's
out.
very helpful.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God, yes. Yes.
They did a nice article.
This is beautiful.
That's awesome.
It's better than the internet article.
Yeah, I actually don't talk about the medical intervention. I go when I go to the towns. You know what they want to hear about?
Money and jobs, and that's what we bring Hugh on. The UFCW guy. They stay like love him. It's great.
Good luck. I know
Thanks,
there
man.
happens to be a Chick-fil-A in this town, which is very exciting.
Okay.
Because it's very hard to find. Yeah, Chick-fil-A's and we have a Roy. This is like a town out of the middle of the
take care,
country
guys. See you
in New
later.
Jersey.
Good night.
We have a Roy Rogers and a Chick-fil-A. It's like we're in Oklahoma, right? But we're in New Jersey. This is a weird. Flemington's like
It is.
its own little
It
universe.
is.
But we're not so far.
Get the keys.
Listen, we're gonna build. I'm gonna tell you. I have 2 locations in Flemington. I have at least 2 dispensaries that are going to go into Kingwood. We're going to go full 25 miles from there. Some towns that have farming communities are going to go everything but dispensary. In the end, the biggest thing to sit will be a recreational dispensary. Medical, even the towns that said no, like Bridgewater, they're going to have to look medical. So I don't think
They would have a choice in the
they
end.
won't have a choice in the end on medical.
That's what happened, I think, in Massachusetts, correct?
Yes, in the end, the medical.
That's what's gonna happen. I told these people in my town, you're wasting your fucking time and you're making
Yeah.
us look like.
They gotta.
The new argument though is you can use this one is just so you understand that the federal government is legalizing hemp now, and hemp smells like weed, and the same knuckleheads that try to steal weed will try to steal your hemp. So you have the same security issues. The same costs are going to be
Yeah.
involved.
Yes.
You might as well
Yes.
just get the tax money from
Right.
the other stuff,
Right.
because no one will stop us from growing hemp anywhere.
Right.
We'll just grow it,
Yep.
and no one's going to stop it. Still smells
Can
like
we just
weed.
plant THC plants? Use that as hemp?
Well,
That really, is that,
if I were
that's a
in-
good question. I can't answer that. Are they interchangeable?
I have
Is
no
it like
idea
for
how I
textiles
would.
or building materials?
I have no idea how I would behave if I were in your position personally.
Well, you probably just got a little shot of it
I got a
here
little.
tonight.
I would probably. I probably would have already made.
And that's not the first time I held a joke.
I probably would already planted the plant in this house. I would probably already gone a step further because I know that your narrative is you're dealing with something much more important. I'm talking about jobs and money. That's not the same thing.
This is a
I
sideshow
understand.
to me.
I understand.
I'm dealing with,
Yeah, you're dealing with real shit.
Yeah.
Real shit. And this.
if, whatever that is, you know, I'm not.
But you got him on
necessarily-
camera to say that he's being paid.
Yes.
And you have it on tape.
Multiple times.
Yeah,
Oh, he-
that
he-
was
yeah,
so
he's not-
stupid.
Like I said, you're on the record.
Duh.
Fucking idiot. That was
Well, he
so
just wants people, in that case, people something to pause about.
Well, he's selling himself for something he's not.
Yeah, it was actually a good business. He banned it in his own town, and then they said, "Oh, you're the guy, you're the leader." I should have thought of that. I should
Yeah,
have.
you
I
see-
can't decide. which
You're the
side I'm on.
bandmaster.
That's what I told him that in front of his own council in his town. I said, you use the goddamn townspeople as a poker chip
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
something that's
Yeah.
you know, on your personal agenda somewhere else in the state. You know?
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of people
No.
that showed up. I mean, listen, there are legitimate concerns.
I think they were shocked.
Yeah.
Me sitting there with that sign, they were like,
Yeah.
that guy was annoying the fuck out of me.
Yeah, no, he doesn't like you.
He won't, no, the guy holding the microphone, he won't come
Oh.
near you.
Yeah, you had to go up to him. I saw that.
Well, I enjoy the podcast, or the podcast, or whatever it is.
Thanks. You have a card? We got a card
That
from
was
you.
my old daughter's. I can't tell you the extent of what we told me because she doesn't want anyone to know what she's doing. This isn't my card. It's my brother's card.
I'll let you know when I see you on Arby's stage.
It's okay. Aubrey's one of us.
You can't make me sneaky about nothing.
This is my old address.
Okay.
The phone number.
Perfect.
Now listen, sometimes you call my number, sometimes.
Thanks.
Aubrey, I'm fulfilling. I'm the mercenary. She's the moral compass.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if she says this is where we're going, I say, let me use my evil brain.
And she's a mercenary too. don't get it twisted. She's tough. And I love it.
Hey, man.
Thanks, man.
Good luck.
Good night.
Appreciate it. We'll see you again.
Jeff,
Go
see you,
to
buddy.
the fun, yep.
I gotta go by the library. I'm on the other side.
Where you going? You gonna smoke somewhere?
Where are you gonna smoke? No, I'm going home. I'm out of here. Good night. See you online, man. Good night. Thank you. All right, well, there it is. Whoop, no, we're not on Facebook. We're on YouTube. How do I turn this around? Okay, we're on YouTube. All right, so very interesting meeting. I didn't get to speak. I was going to speak about the job protection for cops because they don't have job protection. And as you can see, the chief will not answer that question. The chief says, I will follow the law. Well, do you have an opinion? No, he doesn't have an opinion. He can't have an opinion because it's illegal for him to have that opinion. And that's sad when law enforcement can't have an opinion on something. They should have an opinion because they're suffering just like the rest of us. They're on Oxycontin, Prozac, all these horrible drugs just like we are. How come they have to be like second-class citizens? How come they don't get treated like us? They need to be treated better so that they can treat us better. Hashtag they shall grow. We have one more tomorrow. I'll be in Florham Park tomorrow. And after that, I'm going on vacation. I'm having my operation in January, so you're not going to see me for a while. But we'll be doing a podcast. Well, we'll still do something. We have something going on. Wayne, if Wayne can figure out how to push the buttons correctly, we will have a podcast for you every Tuesday and Thursday in January. So, oh my God, I'm gonna leave this on because this is scary. I could get mugged back here. There's a million cops here, and I'm scared. Because there's none back here. All the cops are back there. Look at this. This is what handicapped people have to do. If they park by the library, they got to go all the way up through here. This is kind of scary. I hope I remember where to go. All right. Hashtag they shall grow. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not worry them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.